big long intro on your amazing career, and then it'll jump right into it.
Thank you.
Here we go. There he is, Don Winslow. The new book is out, and it's the first of three, and they're all published, and I'm very excited. They're all written, and I'm very excited to talk to you about City on Fire. But Don, apparently I have to address the fact that you've also announced that you're retiring. Welcome to the show. Great to see you. What's going on?
Great to see you, Pete. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm pulling the pin. There are other things that I want to put my time and energy into. You might know that we've been pretty active
Oh,
on,
yeah.
on Twitter and sort of speaking out against what I think is wrong. And I want to have the time and energy to do that. I want to have more time to spend with aspiring writers and to try to lift them, pay a little bit back. So yeah, there'll be two more books after this, one each year, 23 and 24, and that'll be it.
Well, I want to get to the books, but I just want to pick up on I haven't talked to you in a long time, but I've certainly been following, supporting, and sharing your videos, your tweets,
Thank you.
because you really have evolved into not only a best-selling author whose work gets turned into TV shows and movies and has won all kinds of awards, but you've really turned into an activist. You've taken your following, your brand, and you have not only been fearless. I mean, you've said anything you wanted without any concern about how it might hurt, say, book sales. Why? And has it?
You have to. We're in an existential moment in American democracy, and I've thought that since 2016. And so, compared to that, book sales are frankly less important. You know, uh, and I think that my buddy, my friend Shane Salerno, and I do this thing. Uh, we want to speak in plain language because the other side does. They feel free to say anything, the most outrageous lies and accusations. And so I think it's important that there are some people out there who are also willing to speak in language as blunt and sometimes harsh.
Yeah, I watched your interview with CBS Sunday Morning's Jeff Mason, and you did an interview with him a few years ago
Yeah,
when I don't know what was out, The Border maybe, but
yeah, maybe.
that's a great show. They give you a lot of time in a network morning show. Clearly, Jeff Mason respects your work, but he really, I thought, gave you a bit of a hard time in one portion of the interview where he said, "Don't you think?" Basically, I'm paraphrasing, your rhetoric, maybe it's not helping. It's too much. It's too hyperbolic. It's too angry or whatever. And what did you say to that? And what do you think about that?
Actually, it's Jeff Glor, and I
Oh,
have
my
I
bad.
have I have known him for a while, and he always challenges you. He always throws that kind of question out.
Yeah.
I don't recall exactly what I said to him, but I'll tell you what I think. You know, I think he was saying, "Aren't you part of this polarization?" And what I would say is that right and wrong are polar opposites. Democracy and dictatorship are polar opposites. They're doing a fire drill here in the hotel, by the way. So if you
Oh,
hear the
great.
beeping noise, there's nothing I can do about it. They're starting on the fourth floor, and I'm hoping that we finish up before they get to 14. But and so I think, look, the other side again feels free to say anything they want, and then when we respond in kind, they start crying. Oh, the media is being mean to me. Don Winslow's being mean to me. He talks in harsh language. We have to stop, metaphorically speaking, bringing spoons to knife fights. Is what it is, man. I'm just going to say what I'm going to say.
Do you think it's been effective? You've made these
Mhm.
really slick, well-produced, very powerful videos. I love them. I eat them all up. Yum, yummy. Sip it up. I love it. Is it working to, I don't know, what is the goal, I guess? How do you measure if it's effective?
Yeah, listen. There's no particular metric, that's decisive. But I'll give you some indications. Uh, we did a video for Pennsylvania during the last presidential election that had 10 million views, more views than the candidates' videos. And you know how tight the Pennsylvania election was.
Yeah.
Candidates in various places where we've done this have told us how effective and what a difference these videos have made. So that kind of feedback leads me to believe that yes, we're being effective.
I promise you I'm getting to your new book out
All right.
today because I'm posting this on the 26th. City on Fire. Everybody's got to get it. But I got to ask you one or two more questions
Yeah,
on your
sure.
activism and your work
Of course.
because, and I've loved reading this book. It's so
Thank
good.
you.
But also, well, I'll ask you about it in a moment.
Right.
So what is it, do you think, Don, that's the kind of most important issue or issues? Because what I'm kind of seeing with a lot of what you've been saying in interviews and on social media and in your statement that you just put out, which I'll share, I think I already did, is listen, there has to be consequences. There has to be justice for specifically, obviously, trying to overthrow a democratically election, and as well as the insurrection. Is it that? Are there other specific issues that you're more concerned about?
Of course, there are other specific issues, and we would want to talk about voting rights, women's rights, racism, police shootings. We want to discuss all of those things, but they're all of a piece. And if we allow our democracy to fall to people who are willing to do a violent insurrection, to overthrow the government of the United States, all those other issues tumble with them. So we need consequences for this, or it will happen again. And look what's happening right now, or look what's not happening right now. There hasn't been a single indictment. There hasn't been a single subpoena of a Republican politician that was involved with January 6th. And a lot of them were. Over 50 candidates who were involved with that are running for office. And look at the kind of person that the Republicans are putting up. In Georgia, they're putting up a Senate candidate, a candidate rather, who who put a gun to his wife's head.
Right. Yeah.
Is
It's, I
that the
mean,
kind of person that we want in our office? No, I think not. And so we need public hearings about January 6th, under oath, the way that we had in Watergate. And you asked me one question, and I'm going on and on, but
no,
that
I think that's the most important point is what you said. We can't get to solving or at least working on the climate crisis, economic inequality, labor rights, and all of the issues that you mentioned and more if we don't have a decent, much less vibrant or healthy democracy. And that's what we're worried about losing in these midterm elections. I mean, I'm glad your book is out. I'm glad you're promoting it, but I'm also glad you're spending now most of your time on this activism because in the run up to the midterm elections, it seems, Don, that people feel comfortable that Donald Trump is gone. People on the left, progressives, Democrats, or as I call them, people who live on Earth One. So he's gone. So we don't need to really worry anymore.
well,
I feel like we're resting.
he's not gone. How can you say he's gone when we see him every day?
Agreed. I agree with
When
you.
when he's out there spewing his lies,
Yep.
he's the carnival barker president, and he's not gone. I think he will run again, and I think we're going to have to fight him, and we're going to have to beat him again. And it's not just him; it's his political spawn and his imitators. That are out there trying to do their best Trump act. Some of them are good at it. Some of them are simply buffoons. Uh, he's spawned a whole generation now of these people.
I hope that you're working with, whether you can talk about it or not, specific congressmen or senators, like someone like Jamie Raskin or Sheldon Whitehouse or somebody like that, because you're so effective with this media. You're so good at editing, putting together these videos, producing them, turning them around, and them being effective. The idea that you would be working with them would seem to make sense. Is
I'm
that
not going to comment on any particular relationships or partnerships, but we're our own thing. I'm going to do my own thing with Shane. We're our own operation. Having said that, the other day we put out a call saying we're trying to build an army, and my God, the response has been overwhelming. Tens of thousands of people from all areas of life, including, yes, politics, uh, you know, media, show business, doctors, lawyers, working people have responded, and we've been overwhelmed by that, and we'll be utilizing those relationships.
Yeah, great. Well, I mean, I think that what you're doing is awesome. I think that we have to stand up to bullies. That's what my show's name has been. Stand up to I mean, you have to
Have to.
punch back in a way and play to some extent the game they're playing. And it's a really hard thing to do because we're always having to react to manufactured arguments so often. Like, I can't believe I have to react to CRT. I can't believe that's a thing that I have to react
I know
to.
it's unbelievable, but that's the thing. We need to change the momentum. Do you know what I mean? We don't necessarily always have to wait for the attack. We do have to react. We do have to respond, no question. But there are times we should be getting off first, both in the positive sense and the negative sense. We should be getting off first to talk about what the Democratic Party is doing, what President Biden is doing, the positive things, let people know what they're doing for the average person in America. And then we also can get off attacking the other side proactively. We don't necessarily always have to be in a responsive mode.
Uh, Let me just ask you about how it's been for you to be so outspoken. You're a best-selling author. You're very, very well-known guy at this point in your career, in your life. You have a huge following on social media. And when you put yourself out there like this, I mean, I already touched on it just briefly, but what has been the reaction to you? Do you get all kinds of things, social media, emails? Has anybody dropped a head of an animal in your home?
Nobody's actually dropped a head of an animal in my home. I do get that kind of response. Look, the overwhelming majority of the responses have been positive and supportive, but of course, I make people mad. You know, the Proud Boys, the white supremacists, the hardcore Trumpies don't like it, and they've done all kinds of things. They put out fake Don Winslow accounts to say as if I'm saying horrible things about people. They do, make threats. And so, yeah, but listen, that comes with the territory. If you're going to enter that ring, you're going to expect some of those punches thrown.
Well, I'm so happy that you've entered the ring and that you've decided to stay in the ring. But you have written this new book. It's out today, City on Fire, and it's a part of another trilogy. You've already written one, right? Was there more than
Yeah.
one trilogy? And
Oh,
so
one trilogy, yeah.
you've got the sequels coming out next year and the year after. So it's a great plan and it's a great series.
Thank you.
I'm absolutely loving it, and it's a fascinating story because you're a fascinating story, Don Winslow. You became a successful writer, like what, in your 50s?
Yeah, I think I'd had about 12 published books and $37 in the bank.
Right. So you were making a little money selling your books, but you weren't this major success that you obviously are now. But before any of those books published, who the hell were you? You lived everywhere. You did everything. You lived like 400 lives. You're like Tristan from Legends of the Fall, except for not at all. You're not at all like him,
Not
but
at
I can't
all,
stop.
yeah. I wish, I wish. Yeah, look, man, I was trying to make a living, I always wanted to be a writer since I was a kid, but the world doesn't stamp your passport that way, and so I wanted to make a living. I'm trying to find some light here as the window shifts, as the light comes through. Uh, so I wanted to do interesting things, you know? And so, yeah, I was a private detective. I was a photographic safari guide in Africa. I directed Shakespeare plays for international high school students at Oxford summers,
Crazy. Yeah.
I did all kinds of goofy things, but they were all interesting. They were all fun. I enjoyed them.
And for this new book, you went back to your roots because I didn't know that you're born in New York, but grew up in Rhode Island, where I
Yeah,
guess you now spend what, half the year or
about half a
something.
year, yeah.
And I didn't know about the Irish and Italian mafia. I mean, I knew a little bit because of a couple films, but
Yeah.
basically, you wrote this series over 20 years with parallels to Greek and Roman literature,
Mhm.
and starting in, it taking place where you grew up. This is based on a lot of real life people that
Yeah.
apparently you were around in the 80s
Yep.
in Rhode Island, the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, 60s, 70s, 80s, I was a kid, and the mob guys were always on the periphery. You were aware of them. It was in those days a major part of the culture. Now it's since declined, quite a bit as it has, of course, nationwide. But yeah, they were the stuff and essence of my life. And when I started rather late in life to read works like the Iliad and the Odyssey, the parallels just struck me. The Trojan War began in an argument over a woman, and there was a very similar incident that actually happened in New England, between Irish and Italian gang guys, and so that just struck me like a slap in the face. Like, I know this story already. I didn't need to read it in the classics. I saw it, and so I thought, man, could I write three crime novels that would stand alone, just as crime novels, without any reference to the classics at all, but follow the stories and characters of those great classics and those themes? And hopefully the answer is yes.
How much did you know about them growing up there? How much of City on Fire is or are things that really happened? How much are the characters based on
Uh,
actual men and women?
Almost all of it. It's not based on, for the most part, particular men and women, right? It's definitely a work of fiction, but it's based on types of men and women, certainly, that I knew growing up.
So when you're writing about you're a crime writer, you've been writing about all kinds of different types of organizations and criminals, obviously the border and the drug cartels.
Mhm.
What is the parallel? And I think there is one between organized mobs and mafia in the United States. You're writing about the Irish and Italian and the Mexican and Central and South American drug cartels.
Listen, there are a lot of differences, and we can go over those if you'd like. But all organized crime, of course, is based on money, power, and turf. And those, of course, are all related. So at the end of the day, it's almost fair to say that they're all based on money. Another similarity is that organized crime groups tend to be ethnically based. Now, that's exaggerated in the media and fiction because there are great exceptions to that. But they tend to be ethnically based. In the United States, they tended to be ethnically based around immigrant groups, right? That arrived here and had to find a place to, against great opposition, to set their feet and to make a life. Most of those people, 99%, made it honestly, you know. Another 1% took another route.
Right.
So when you're looking at organized crime, there are certain things that are always in common, and then there are things that are distinct to those particular cultures. So writing about it, whether it was the Mexican cartels or the New England mobs or whatever, was a matter of getting to know those particular cultures so that you could make it real to the reader.
And you certainly know how to make it real to the reader because you're from there. You weren't you weren't in the in the mob, but you were from there. You saw it, and you have so many references. It's really my favorite place, I think, because of my childhood. We spent a lot of time there in New England.
Okay.
So many references to it that I want to try to get to. But one more question about that, because I think as I'm reading the book, I'm like, boy, Don is like taking a lot of liberties with some of the words in here and some of the ethnic references and so on. And you know the ones I'm talking
Yeah.
about. And as a Sicilian, married, I'm a quarter Sicilian, but my wife is
Mhm.
half, and we go there every year. And if you say that they are, mafia, that is the deepest insult you could say. You do make a point, obviously, to say they are the exception to their people, the Irish and Italian
Sure.
criminals. But do you worry or about getting in trouble for playing, talking about these types of Italians, these types of Irish? And by the way, why are we so fascinated with them?
Well, for one thing, I write crime stories.
Well, there you go.
So the characters in my books are mostly going to be criminals.
Right,
And
right.
I hasten to say to my many Italian friends, and I'm Irish, look, no offense, that's the story that I write, you know? So I'm going to use,
Why not write a nice immigrant story, Don?
because I am a crime writer. I live in that genre very happily and very proudly. So people need to understand. Now, you do try to give it some balance. You know, I remember in the Sopranos series, they kind of went out of their way to have dinner conversations
Yeah.
about exactly the issue that you're bringing up. Uh, I write very tight to the bone crime stories, you know? So there's that. I forgot the second half of your
Why
question.
are we so
Ah,
obsessed with organized crime in our literature, in our film, and in our lives?
I think it's a power fantasy. Look, again, 99% of the people are law-abiding people, right? And so when a problem comes up, we seek it through lawful means, a solution. In The Godfather, Marlon Brando sits with a cat on his lap in a make it thus world. Make it thus. Make that happen. Make that happen. You alluded to, a head in the bed, right? Uh, I think that's a fantasy for all of us. It'd be nice to get that parking ticket fixed, the noisy neighbor spoken to, or on a deeper level when people have really serious, injustices done to them and have to go through this, labyrinth of legal procedures and may or may not get justice. There's a fantasy about just going to some guy, right? And saying, "Help me out here." Make that problem go away. Get me justice. And so I think that is seductive on a big level. I think the other reason is that these crime stories, and particularly organized crime stories, are almost invariably about conflict, and that conflict is out there and it's very open. And I think that is both interesting and cathartic.
It's also really interesting because you often hear about how family is the most important thing. Certainly, you always hear about that in the Italian mafia, that they have this code, which is all bullshit.
All bullshit.
And in your book, it starts with these guys being the closest of friends,
Mhm.
closer than family. And then obviously, I don't think it's anything to give away. Things break down between these
Yeah,
Irish and Italian friends in Rhode Island. How true is that they start that close,
very
but they
true.
end?
Very true, based on real stuff. And that's why I love writing, or loved in this case, writing about the New England crime scene. If you write about New York, guys may or may not know each other. You know, in Providence, everybody knew each other, right? You're chock a block. That state's the size of a Walmart parking lot,
Right,
right?
right.
You're a half an hour from anywhere. Okay, and so everybody in those days in the crime world knew each other. There were intermarriages. They go to weddings, funerals, parties together. The beach party, which kicks off this book,
Yeah.
and so no, extremely realistic in that regard.
I love every reference that you make to New England. It's so, visceral in my life. However, I did not like, I agree with you, but didn't realize that there was an authentic clam chowder, but you disparage New England clam chowder in a way I've never heard a New Englander until I realize the authenticity, at least according to Rhode Islanders?
Yes, glad you brought this up, Pete. Thank you.
No,
It's
I've
a
never
sore
seen.
subject
You've
with
been
me.
so angry about the, dwindling democracy, but this really, it revealed,
Chowder.
you put it in the book,
Um,
it's filled with rage.
yeah, I mean, listen, it could be the end of life as we know it.
No,
I'm a
they
chowder look, I'm a chowderhead, right? I'm from a little fishing village in New England, and I'm going to insist to you that the only proper way of making chowder is with clear clam broth.
mm.
It is not with cream, which is sort of disgusting baby puke, and for God's sakes, it is not this abomination called Manhattan clam chowder, made with tomato sauce, which is an offense to God. Uh, but the problem is, Pete, that there are only literally two or three places, two or three restaurants in this little sliver of Southern Rhode Island where I'm from that still make legitimate, ethical, moral, and blessed clam chowder.
Well, you've said that you've been accused of being divisive on the political front, but I feel like what you've just said to me is the most divisive thing you may have ever uttered anywhere.
Do you think I've launched like chowder wars now? There's
I think it'd
culture
be
war and there's chowder war.
I'm posting this tomorrow. which is the day your book comes out
Yeah.
and the day you will be canceled once and for all.
By the cream chowder people. It's all right with me. Listen, I invite I invite them to come, and I will get them real chowder. They'll never go back. They will never go back. They will thank me. They will say, "Don, we're so incredibly grateful. I can't believe that you've changed our lives."
Talk about a video that'll go viral, someone tasting the clear broth chowder for the first time. Let me tie it all together,
That's an
Winslow.
idea, man. I might do that. I might do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it'll be a real it'll show that you transparently really wanna open minds. You wanna
And
open
transparency is the word because we're talking about clear broth
that's
chowder. So, transparency here
if you say so, boss.
is
I've
exactly the issue. Yeah, I'll be happy to be the godfather of genuine chowder.
let me tie it all together. City on Fire about the Irish and Italian, mafia, organized crime. You kind of psychoanalyze why we are obsessed with them in terms of power. But we started by talking about politics. You've written and talked all about Donald Trump and his family and his attraction to interest in people like Vladimir Putin, who you've also
Mhm.
talked about, and other authoritarian leaders. Donald Trump has been described as worshiping mafia bosses, working with them and acting just like one. I think it's a perfect description of him. Tie it all together for me by talking about, these types of men particularly and why they gain and keep power and what needs to be done.
Well, I think Donald Trump has a sort of mob boss fantasy. Now, if the Trumps were a mob family, they would not be the Corleones. I would, more or less say that they would come out of the gang that couldn't shoot straight. Although I don't know how you have 2 sons and both of them are Fredo, by the way. That,
That's
that
hurtful.
that's
Really
an
mean,
issue.
John. Really mean.
But well, I'm not here to be nice. Look, I people like Putin, like Donald Trump, at the end of the day, have extraordinarily weak egos. It's not strong egos we need to be afraid of, whether it's with a political leader, with a cop, with a military person, with anybody on the street. It's the weak egos that do a lot of damage because they are endlessly needy of praise. That's why this guy just loves rallies, right? Love me, love me, love me, love me, love me, to a person who is essentially unlovable, a narcissistic sociopath, and he can't get enough of that stuff. Putin is the same way. So little wonder that Trump would admire Putin because he aspires to that sort of high level mobsterism. You know, how did he get powerful? Simplistic answers to complicated problems
Mm.
that people can just go, oh, what's the solution to immigration? A wall. Duh. I, you know, Obviously not, but one syllable,
Right.
right?
Right.
So what do we do about it? We speak the truth. We speak it loudly. We call it what it is. We don't talk about, oh, Donald Trump acted, against the norms. We say Donald Trump committed crimes. We don't say Donald Trump attempted to subvert American democracy, although that's true. We say Donald Trump committed treason. That's what we do about it, and we talk in those plain, simple terms.
Do you think that our collective lack of ability to pay attention for long periods of time because of social media, internet, and videos being everywhere makes it so much harder for us to come to these solutions? You grew up as a little boy getting books from the library, reading nonstop. You've written so many books. And I don't know how you yourself don't get distracted while you're writing or what your practice is for reading and so on. But like, it's hard to beat the simple one word answer that is appealing to our tribal brains. That's hard to combat. What do we do when the truth requires a few more words, maybe even a book on an issue like immigration?
It's tough, isn't it? Look, because there are no easy answers to issues like immigration. There just aren't. We can break it down into bites. Do you know what I mean? We can take one thing at a time. We can ask people, do you think this is right? If your answer is no, okay, let's go to the next step. Do you think it's right to treat another human being as a lesser thing? No. Okay, then how do you feel about a child at the border? I'm convinced, if any of these kids showed up on the doorsteps of many of these people who are anti-immigration,
Yeah.
they'd take care of that kid.
Well, I have an even better one for you, which is my neighbor across the street's, constantly watching Fox News, and these people are crazy. They're talking about immigration,
Yeah,
yet they have a whole crew that does their lawn
constantly.
every single week, and I'm not positive they're undocumented, but I'm almost positive they
Right,
are,
right.
and they're doing work at their house, and that's true of almost all of us.
Yes.
So if you wanna scream about the issue, but you're also they're working for you at a really affordable price, that's almost a
Yeah,
better example than what you just said.
it is actually a better example than what I just said. And also, we can say, look, immigration doesn't cost American jobs. Immigration builds American jobs because immigrants have to eat, buy clothes, rent, buy houses, all of that kind of thing. It creates income. So if immigrants are not responsible for more crime than native born Americans, they have a crime rate one-fifth of native born Americans. So again, you can take some of these facts, you can take them one at a time, and you can build from there.
Well, I love talking to you, Don. I love catching up with you. The book is so good. I don't like that you made me like a mob boss, Danny Ryan. I don't like that you humanize these people and make me see them as humans. That makes me feel uncomfortable. Do you have anything you want to apologize?
No, I don't want to apologize. Listen, Pete, I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. Always, it's the last thing in the world I'd want to do, but it's my job. It's my job to bring people into a world that they otherwise couldn't go into and see it through those people's eyes. That's what I do for a living.
I was obviously joking, but on that joke, what do you say to the parents that are at my BOE meeting saying, "You're making my kids uncomfortable by making them feel bad about who they are as white people?" What do you say? What would you say to them?
Do I make kids feel bad as white people?
No, 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 I'm not
Okay.
saying that you say that. I'm saying I don't know, maybe
You
somebody could
lost me, Pete. I
there's this idea that children are being made uncomfortable in their
oh,
schools by learning about history. This is
I
something I hear a lot, and I'm
right.
wondering what your response would be to a
Oh,
parent who's worried about what their kids are
yeah,
learning in
yeah,
school. Because
sure.
my answer is that's not a school thing, that's a parenting thing, and school is supposed to make you uncomfortable. Learning makes you uncomfortable. You've traveled the world, Don, you've seen it all. I'm sure you've been uncomfortable.
I have been uncomfortable, and I'm constantly uncomfortable. Here's what I say to those parents. One, history is history. You're entitled to your own opinions, you're not entitled to your own facts. If we're going to teach history, let's teach history that's as accurate as we know. Okay, things always change, by the way. We always learn more. New sources come up, all kinds of things. But if we're going to teach kids history, let's teach them the real history. Two, let's stop underestimating our kids, please. They're not stupid. They're not so, fragile that they can't handle an idea that is maybe opposite of what they thought. I feel the same way about readers. Let's not underestimate our readers. They can handle things, you know and so let history be what it is, and the kids will deal with it. And then if they're having a difficulty with it, sure, talk to your parents about it, but let's stop underestimating.
Well said, sir, and congratulations. City on Fire is available now, and I can't wait for the sequels, but everybody go get it and support all of Don's work. Don, great to see you again. Thank you
Good
so
to
much
see
for
you,
joining
Pete.
me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a good time.